In this video, I want to talk about the student model that you can find on page 35 in Rules for Writers. The student model, I think, is a good way to think about how to proceed with your own narrative essay. And so I want to talk just a little bit about how she organizes her introduction. And I'm just going to begin by reading that aloud to you and then discussing what I notice. So the essay begins, a place to begin. I grew up in the heart of Hanoi, Vietnam, Nha Giao, a small but busy neighborhood swamped with crime, houses wedged in among cafes and other local businesses, measured uniformly about 200 square feet, and the walls were so thin that we could hear every heated debate and impassioned disagreement. Drug addicts scoured the vicinity and stole the most mundane things: old clothes, worn slippers, even license plates of motorbikes. It was a neighborhood where dogs howled and kids ran amok, and where the earth was always moist and marked with stains. It was the 1990s Vietnam in miniature, with all the turmoil and growing pains of a newly born nation. In a city perpetually inundated with screaming children and slimy criminals, I found my place in the home of a Vietnam War veteran. So one of the things I think this writer does that is incredibly successful is her introduction is very detailed. We get a clear description of the city that helps to draw the reader in. The sentences use parallelism, which we've talked about in some of our previous units, but also just the appeal to the senses, right? We can hear, we can see, we can smell. We really get a sense of what this place is like. Once the writer has already created tension through that kind of edgy, ominous description, we then arrive at the thesis statement, which appears in the first sentence of the first body paragraph. In a city perpetually inundated with screaming children and slimy criminals, I found my place in the home of a Vietnam War veteran. The thesis then contrasts or builds out of that introduction that creates this scene of complete chaos. We then have the answer as to why we've been learning about that chaos and a direction as to where the rest of the narrative will go. We know from this thesis statement that the writer is going to continue to narrate why it is that that Vietnam War veteran was so important to her, what it means to find her place, and really this sense of home contrasted or maybe growing out of that really chaotic scene that she opens it. So I would look at this when you are beginning to write your own example as a model for thinking about how to use narrative description as a way to set up the opening of a longer narrative essay.